Thank you again to everyone attending. This is the BLB Resources, How to Complete a HUD Sales Contract Package webinar. We're here today just to help everyone kind of go through the sales contract package and how to correctly submit it. HUD does have quite a few guidelines, and we want to make sure that we're here to help you all get through this process and move on to a successful closing. So I'm going to get started. Again, my name is Nicole. I am here. I'm with Cantave Realty Group. I work alongside Nick Cantave, and we are in the listing office for HUD Homes. How does the Buyer Select program work? The buyer must select any state licensed escrow company upon bid acceptance. The Buyer Select addendum is completed and submitted to BLB Resources with contract package within 2 days of business acceptance. The addendum includes EMD instructions and a statement that the buyer agrees to the EMD being held by the LLB, which is the listing office, then forwarded to the escrow company within 48 hours of contract ratification. Contract packages are available on both HUD Home Store and BLB Resources Agent Resources page corresponding to your state. You can find this on the following link, which is www.blbresources.com/resource map. The Buyer Select Addendum is also available as a separate downloadable form on the BLB Resources website. And note the original contract package must include a copy of the EMD. Is submitted to the LLB within 2 days of bid acceptance. We recommend that a copy of the Buyer Select Addendum to be provided to the LLB so that the LLB may verify the EMD is correct. Now, one thing that we do request here at Cantave Realty Group is that you send us a copy of the entire contract package before you overnight it to BLB, just so we can review it and help you make sure that there aren't any corrections that are needed before it's sent out to BLB. At this point, the sales team will conduct normal contract package review. They will ensure the Buyer Select Addendum is included and complete. A copy of the escrow company's license and insurance must be included for any escrow company that has not previously closed any HUD transactions. On a side note, BLB is requesting that for each transaction, the escrow company's license and insurance is included while they build up their database where they're the new asset management company for HUD. If an addendum is missing or incomplete, a correction request will be sent to the selling agent. The license and insurance upload link may be sent directly to the escrow company if not provided with the addendum and selling agent is non-responsive to the correction request. If necessary, the sales team will forward Buyer Select Addendum to Philadelphia HOC so HUD can assign a title ID number. HUD anticipates a 24-hour turnaround time for this task. After escrow company is assigned a title ID number, the contract will be ratified if all other requirements are met. Upon contract ratification, the LLB will be instructed to forward the EMD to the selected escrow company. And now, as we previously stated, the HUD sales contract can be found on blbresources.com, but it can also be found on hudhomestore.com. Please download the electronically fillable sales contract package from the addendums tab on www.hudhomestore.com or from the forms page on the BLB Resources website corresponding to your state. Please do not submit your state contract forms as we can only accept the HUD contract packages. This cover page here is actually a very important form. So you want to make sure that when you are filling out your contract, that all this information is accurate and complete. So what happens is when the data is entered on the cover page of the electronically fillable sales contract package, it's really neat. It actually auto-populates right onto the contract. So you don't have to keep retyping everything in over and over again. It's actually a great time saver, and it makes sure that the correct information is input into the form. It will auto-populate the appropriate fields of the sales contract package, and you will not need to manually input data. This is actually the preferred method, so please make sure you do follow this when you are filling out your contract. If you do choose to enter it manually, input the data into a blank sales contract, please follow the instructions in the following pages to reduce possible errors. And make sure that it is typed in. HUD will not accept any handwritten contracts. Please note that the conventional loan box must be checked if purchaser is obtaining other financing, such as VA, rural development, USDA, etc. The cash box must be checked if purchaser is paying cash or utilizing hard money financing. Let's start by filling out the sales contract. You'll note on the upper right-hand box, it requests the FHA case number. This can be found on HUD Home Store. It can also be found on our MLS listing sheet. We make sure that every property's case number is listed on the MLS sheet. And it will also be in the email correspondence you receive from BLB and from us stating that your offer was provisionally accepted. And please enter the purchaser's name and the complete property address on line 1, and remember to include the county. Line 2 is where you will specify how the title is being taken. Please enter the name and style in which the title will be taken for the buyers. Common examples of the style in which a title may be taken include a single man or woman, joint tenants with right of survivorship, community property, and tenants in common. Please advise your client to seek legal counsel if they have questions regarding the style in which they should take title. Line 3 references the EMD, so please enter the purchase price and the amount of the earnest money deposit. There are different requirements for amounts, so please pay attention to your purchase price and the amount that is required for the earnest money. If your purchase price is $50,000 or less, the EMD required is $500. If your purchase price is $50,001 or more, the EMD is $1,000. For vacant lots or sales less than $500, the EMD is 50% of the list price. And for good neighbor next door properties, which is also GNND properties, the EMD is 1% of the list price and not less than $500 and not to exceed $2,000. Please also enter the name of the buyer's selected escrow company. Do not enter HUD designated closing agent. Any contract submitted with HUD designated closing agent may receive a correction request, which may delay ratification. Line 4 is regarding financing type. Please check the appropriate box. If the purchaser is obtaining FHA insured 203B financing, the following boxes should be checked. And you can see here we have circled that the purchaser is applying for FHA insured financing and it's 203B financing, which would be a non-rehab loan. The lines for down payment amount, mortgage amounts, months, and repair escrow amount should be left blank. If the purchaser is utilizing the $100 down payment option on an insured with escrow or 203K eligible property, please enter $100 as the down payment in this line. Please also complete the general addendum when a purchaser takes advantage of this program. And this is a great incentive. I highly recommend that you learn more about it and introduce it to your buyers, because a $100 down payment is actually wonderful. And still on line 4 here, if your purchaser is applying for 203K financing, then they should use these boxes. And you can see we have circled that first box, purchaser is applying for FHA insured financing. And then the third box, 203K with a cash down payment, those parts you will still leave blank. However, if the purchaser, again, is utilizing the $100 down payment option, then you would put $100 as the down payment in this line. Again, Again, on line 4, if the purchaser is paying cash or applying for non-FHA financing, such as a conventional mortgage, VA, rural development, etc., the following box should be checked. And it says here the purchaser is paying cash or applying for conventional or other financing not involving FHA. The boxes for FHA insured financing and the lines for down payment amount, mortgage amount, months, and repair escrow amount should be left blank. Please circle cash, conventional, or other financing as appropriate. Other financing types include VA, rural development, USDA, etc. Do not circle cash if using other financing. Please note that purchasers using hard money financing must select cash. Line 5. If closing costs were included when the bid was submitted, and only if they were included when the bid was submitted, the amount entered on this line must match the bid. Please note that requested closing costs may be up to 3% of the purchase price, no more than that. If the requested amount exceeds the actual closing costs, the remaining difference will not be credited to the purchaser and does not reduce the purchase price. Please note, escrow fees will now be a buyer expense. HUD will only pay a portion of the closing fees. If the buyer includes closing costs on line 5 at the time of bid submission and there are sufficient funds remaining to allow for this fee to be paid. If there are no closing costs included in the bid, the buyer will be required to pay all escrow and closing fees. Closing cost credits only apply to owner-occupant purchasers. It's not allowed for investors. Line 6A and 6B are discussing commission. So line 6A is a selling agent commission up to 3% of the purchase price, unless otherwise noted. This must be the same commission entered at the time the bid was submitted. And effective as of December 15, 2016, HUD will no longer pay a sales commission to the selling broker or buyer's broker on an investor sale if the investor buyer is also the selling broker or the buyer's broker on that file. So if you're buying it for yourself, even if it's through your LLC, HUD will not pay a commission to yourself or your office at that point. Line 6B is the listing agent commission, which is 3% of the purchase price unless otherwise noted. Please note that the selling agent may reduce their commission, but the listing agent commission may not be reduced. So if you feel like you want to take a lower commission to try to make your buyer's offer look stronger, then this is where you would enter this amount when you are submitting the buyer's offer. Line 7 is where you will subtract lines 5, 6A, and 6B from line 3 to determine the net amount due to HUD and enter it on this line. If you did use the auto-populating form in the beginning, then this amount should already be filled out. Line 8, check the appropriate box for occupancy as submitted in the bid. Unless the purchaser is a nonprofit or government agency, the discount amount should always be blank. If the purchaser is a nonprofit or government agency, enter the appropriate discount percentage. Line 9 is the number of days for closing, and please note that each offer does have different time frames, so you want to go through this list here that I'm going to read to you to determine how many days your buyer has to close the transaction. So on line 9, please enter the closing time frame as follows. For an investor purchaser, regardless of financing type, it's always 30 days. Also for cash purchasers, even if it's owner occupied, they also have 30 days to close. It's 45 days for owner occupants who are using 203B or 203B repair or conventional financing, and 60 days for owner occupants using 203K financing. Please also enter the name of the buyer selected escrow company, which must match line 3. Do not enter HUD designated closing agent. And again, if you do submit it with HUD designated closing agent, the contract will be returned back to you with a correction request. This does delay ratification and can also result in contract cancellation. Line 10, check the appropriate box for backup status, and that is if your buyer wants their offer to be held as backup or not. Line 11, This is also very important. If the property was built prior to 1978, check the box for lead-based paint is attached and make sure that you do include the lead-based paint addendum in your contract package. If it was built in 1978 or later, check the box for is not attached. The box for other addendum is attached must always be checked. So please make sure to always check this box, other addendum is attached. And note that any addenda not previously approved by the seller may not be made part of this contract. For example, state contract forms, smoke detector addendums, or any other addendums that your buyer or buyer's attorney may want to add, they are not approved. The approved addendum must be signed by and in the same style as those signing as purchasers. On line 12, this is a very important one. You want to make sure that your purchaser initials on the purchaser's line and do not have them initial on the seller's line. I usually will highlight this section just so when I'm going through the contract with my buyer or with anyone else's buyer, that this stands out because it will be returned for correction if it's not there. If there is more than one purchaser, please remember to have all purchasers initial on the purchaser's initials line so they can initial next to each other. Just make sure that they both do initial this form. Line 13 is the purchaser's information. One thing I want to point out, and I will stress this a lot, I can't stress it enough, must be wet signature, must be blue ink. So please remember to type or print the purchaser's names. The signatures are all required for each purchaser, and remember, blue ink. The social security number or EIN, FIN for all purchasers, the purchaser's address and phone number, and the date the contract was signed. Remember to include the address and phone number. I know a lot of times agents will skip over this, but it does get returned for corrections. Please do not have the purchaser sign on the seller line or in the authorizing signature and date box. This is to be used by the authorized HUD signing agent only. And another important point here. This is the certification of broker. Keyword here is broker. So the broker who registered for the NAID must sign. If the selling agent is not the broker, the selling agent can't sign. So if the broker of your office has an NAID number, which they should because you wouldn't have been able to submit your offer without it, then your broker has to sign the form in this section. And signature stamps and DocuSign stamps are not allowed. Authorization letters are only acceptable on a case-by-case basis, and the letter must be case-specific. The NAID must match the NAID under which the bid was submitted. And again, blue ink, wet signatures only. The conditions of sale is the page right after the sales contract, and this must be signed by the purchasers and dated. So don't forget, sign and date, blue ink at the bottom of the form by both purchasers or however many purchasers you may have. The next page is the electronic filing of the HUD 9548 contract addendum. If the purchaser is not a licensed real estate agent or broker, the purchaser must initial the first line. If the purchaser is a licensed real estate agent, the purchaser must initial the second line and the line indicating whether the purchaser is affiliated with the LLB. The purchaser's broker and selling agent must also sign at the bottom of the form. And again, blue ink and no DocuSign. It has to be wet signatures. Another important document is the conflict of interest certification. The purchasers must indicate if they are an employee, family member, or other affiliated entity of the listed parties. If the purchaser is related or affiliated, the purchaser must fill in the relationship and person or entity to whom they are related or affiliated. The purchaser, selling agent, and selling broker must all sign to acknowledge penalties for violations of the conflict of interest policy. Again, blue ink, wet signatures, no electronic signatures. This form here is the rate on gas and mold notice and release agreement. And on this form, the purchasers need to sign at the bottom, original signatures and blue ink, and they also do need to date. The HUD forfeiture and extension policy on page 1. Please fill in the FHA case number and property address at the top of the first page. Again, if you filled in that BLB cover page, then this would have already auto-populated into this form. The purchaser and selling agent must initial the forfeiture of earnest money deposits at the top of page 1. And again, I usually highlight this just so it stands out on the page so it's not missed. And this is regarding the HUD forfeiture and extension policy. Please enter an overnight account number on page 2 if desired. If no account number is entered, then the earnest money will be returned via certified mail. And this is one of the reasons why the earnest money is payable to either, the way they have you fill it out is to the buyer select closing agent or to the buyer's name. And this way it makes it a little bit a quicker process to return the EMD to the purchaser if need be. And the purchaser and selling agent must initial the extension request requirements section near the top of page 2. And again, I usually highlight just so these stand out and the contract isn't returned for any corrections. And continuing on page 3 of the HUD forfeiture and extension policy, the purchaser and selling agent must initial next to the offer exceeding appraised value section in the middle of page 3. And again, I typically highlight this just so it isn't missed. Another standard form in the contract is the for-year protection, get a home inspection. The purchaser must choose whether they wish to have a home inspection performed, then date, sign, and print their name at the bottom. And again, I can't stress this enough, blue ink and wet signatures, no electronic signatures. I sound like a broken record, I know, but it's really important. Now, along with your sales contract, there are several other items that must be included. You want to make sure that you pay attention to this list. You do get detailed instructions in your email once your bid is accepted, and it does list out a lot of these items. However, you want to make sure that you do pay attention because, like I said, if you do have a contract correction, it delays the process, and like HUD discloses, it could result in cancellation. So you need to make sure you include a copy of the earnest money deposit check. And this check, even though it's payable to the buyer select closing agent or the buyer, that check is sent to the LLB. You also need to include a pre-qualification letter or proof of cash funds. And these forms cannot be more than 30 days old. It's very important that you have current documentation. You need to include your own state agency disclosure form, a state buyer select closing agent addendum, the HUD closing instructions and certification, and additional escrow instructions. Like I mentioned before, the earnest money deposit, it has to be certified funds, and they can be in the form of either a cashier's check from the bank or a U.S. postal money order. Checks from credit unions, Western Union, MoneyGram, etc. are not acceptable. And as I previously stated, you want to make your checks payable to the buyer selected escrow company or purchaser's name. It's very important that you include both of these in your payable to section. This way, if the transaction is not consummated, the buyer could more easily cash the EMD check. Checks payable to HUD checks made payable to HUD will be returned for a correction. Please also reference the property address and FHA case number on the check. This just makes it a little bit easier to track the check and make sure that it is applied to the correct file. EMD instructions. Please note that the original EMD checks must now be delivered to the listing agent within 2 business days of bid acceptance and not to BLB Resources, not to HUD, and not to the buyer select closing agent. We recommend that a copy of the buyer select addendum be provided to the LLB so that the LLB may verify the EMD is correct. A copy of the EMD check must be included with the original contract package delivered to BLB Resources within 2 business days of bid acceptance. Again, with HUD, timeframes are very important, so please make sure that you stay within these guidelines. Proof of funds. If paying cash, the purchaser must show proof of funds equal to or greater than the purchase price. If obtaining financing, a valid pre-qualification letter must be included. The approved loan amount must be equal to or greater than the purchase price. The purchasers may be required to show proof of additional funds if the loan amount is less than the purchase price. An escrow amount, if any, must also be included. If owner-occupant purchaser, occupancy section of LSR must state property will be primary residency of purchaser and must be on the lender's letterhead with loan officer's email address. Again, please note the agency disclosure. Please ensure that the sales contract package includes the agency disclosure from your brokerage. So not a BLB form, this is actually your agency disclosure that you use on a daily basis. Please note that this is not a BLB resources or HUD form. This is a form from your brokerage. On the 3P region buyer select closing agent addendum, you're going to want to fill in the FHA case number, which is what I went over with you previously. You need the buyer's name, address, and selling agent info, and also fill in the escrow company information. Now, I know it says if they haven't closed a HUD transaction to attach a copy of the E&O and the license. However, please make sure, even if they have closed one for now, you still want to include a copy of the buyer's select attorney's E&O and license. And the purchaser and selling agent must sign and date at the bottom. Blue ink, wet signatures, no electronic signatures. On the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, closing instructions and certification, on page 1, you only enter the FHA case number, property address, and buyer's name. The remaining fields should be left blank at the time of the contract submission. The escrow company will be required to fill in these fields prior to close of escrow. So do not fill out the remaining fields right now, just fill out the top part. And on page 4, you will notice that the closing agent must sign these documents. And again, they have to be original signatures, they have to be blue ink. So you may need to drive or have the buyer drive to the closing agent's office to have them sign as well. Additional escrow instructions, page 1 and 2. The FHA case number and date must be entered at the top of the first page. If the closing costs were requested on line 5, the amount must be entered on page 2. If the FHA insured financing with a repair escrow is being utilized, the repair amount at the bottom of the first page must state to be determined, or TBD. Additional escrow instructions on page 4. The purchaser and escrow officer must initial the no cancellation charges section on page 4. Again, you can highlight this just so it stands out and you can make sure that your contract is complete. The escrow officer, purchasers, and selling agent must all sign page 4. Blue signatures, wet signatures, and no electronic signatures. The complete contract package may also include the following: the lead-based paint addendum, which is required if built prior to 1978. The additional lead-based paint information receipt addendum, which is also required if built prior to 1978. The flood zone disclosure and addendum, which is required if it's located in a FEMA flood zone. You also may need to provide proof of identity and sales package verification checklist. And moving on to the lead-based paint disclosure. If the property was built prior to 1978, the 2-page lead paint disclosure form must be downloaded from the addendums tab of the property details on HUDHomestore.com. And you can also find a blank form on the forms page corresponding to your state, and that can be found on this link below. The selling broker must initial one of the 3 financing types. And again, notice it's the selling broker, not the buyer. And depending on what type of financing your buyer's getting, it would either be no FHA financing, any FHA financing except 203K, or FHA 203K financing. The purchaser must initial 2 acknowledgments on page 2, and the selling broker has to initial the 3rd acknowledgement. The purchaser and selling broker must sign page 2. And again, blue ink, original signatures. And the second form regarding the lead-based paint is the additional lead-based paint information receipt addendum. If the property was built prior to 1978, this form must be included with the lead-based paint disclosure. The purchaser must initial to indicate their receipt of the available lead-based paint information, and the purchaser and selling broker must sign at the bottom of the form. The flood zone disclosure and addendum is required if the property is located in a FEMA flood zone. This information is usually included in the MLS addendum. And also complete the top portion, then the purchasers and the selling agent must sign and date at the bottom. If you're unsure, like I said, it is on the MLS addendum, which is attached to the MLS sheet, or you can always reach out to the listing broker and we'll be happy to help you out as well. Proof of identity. Copies of documentation may be submitted to show that the legal name on the contract package matches the bid submission. This may include a copy of the purchaser's driver's license, passport, social security card, and/or a recent pay stub that shows a social security number. This is optional. Sometimes it may be asked for in a correction if, for example, a social security number is entered incorrectly, or one of the numbers is off or doesn't match up. We strongly recommend a detailed check of the sales package using the sales package verification checklist. It's not required, but again, I highly recommend it just because, like I said, corrections can delay the process quite a bit. And note that the errors and/or omissions on the HUD 9548 sales contract may result in the cancellation of the provisional bid acceptance. Corrections will require a new original to be sent overnight delivery to BLB Resources, which would be a double expense on your end. FSM inspection request forms. Please view the agent info tab of the property details on HUDhomestore.com for the FSM, which is the field service manager assigned to the property. The original utility request form and deposit, if applicable, must be sent to the FSM after contract ratification. Do not send the utility request forms to BLB Resources for processing. BLB Resources does not process utility activation requests. The purchaser's inspection may not be done until the signed form is returned to the FSM. It is the purchaser's responsibility to activate utilities. Neither BLB Resources nor the assigned FSM will activate utilities, but you have to make sure you have authorization first. Most common sales contract errors. Line 1, sometimes, believe it or not, it happens, their name might be spelt wrong. The line could be left blank. The name doesn't match the bid. For example, the bid in the personal name contract came in with the company name. One name on bid, however, the contract comes in with an additional purchaser on contract. We only add purchasers using an addendum. There is a specific addendum that you'll have to fill out if you need to add a purchaser, and that can be found on blbresources.com. Line 2, the buyer name to only appear once. The name is duplicated frequently. We need the title, style, name, marital status, gender. For example, John Smith, a married man, Jane Doe, a single woman, John and Mary Smith, husband and wife. Tenants and common joints, tenants with right of survivorship, etc. is allowed. However, the following is not allowed: warranty deed, bargain and sale deed, quitclaim deed, etc. So you want to make sure that you specify how they're taking title. Line 3, the EMD, do not leave this blank. It needs to be 500 or 1,000 unless the good neighbor next door. And the EMD held by, which is frequently missing the name of the closing agent or the incorrect information or blank. On line 4, you want to make sure you choose the correct loan type to match the bid. This can only be changed by an addendum, so do not make a change on the contract. The contract has to match the bid. So if your buyer does decide they're going to get a different type of financing, or they change their mind, they want to do cash, that addendum to change financing can be found on blbresources.com as well, under the agent forms for your state. Nothing should appear in the lines regarding the down payment, mortgage, or number of days, with the exception of the $100 down program. If it is an FHA loan and the purchaser is utilizing the $100 down program, then $100 should appear in the down payment section. Everything else remains blank. And remember, no whiteout. Make sure you don't use whiteout. If you do need to make a correction, you can cross it out and make sure that the buyer's initial. And the part that states said mortgage involves a repair escrow should be blank, with the exception of FHA through 203B with repair escrow. And in this case, it should state TBD only, nothing else. On line 7, all of these lines must be completed and match the bid exactly as submitted. As a reminder, sales agents who are also investor purchasers may not ask for closing costs or commission. If they bid using closing cost or commission, they will have to complete a new contract removing these numbers. On line 8, the purchaser type must match the bid. Investors who inadvertently bid as owner-occupied must cancel and resubmit the bid once it's available to investors. On line 9, please enter the correct time here, which is owner-occupant 203B, insured with escrow or conventional financing, enter 45 days. Owner-occupied cash, enter 30 days. Owner-occupied FHA 203K, enter 60 days. All investors, regardless of type of financing, have to enter 30 days. And on line 10, one box must be checked, whether to hold as backup or not. This is frequently missing or the wrong box is checked. And we're continuing on with most common errors. The reason why we're showing you the errors is just because it can kind of help you keep an eye out for things and make sure that you don't make the same errors. On line 11, the lead-based paint addendum is or is not attached, or incorrect box checked or frequently missing. Our package auto checks other addendum is attached, but handwritten contracts miss this frequently. And remember, don't handwrite. If you're going to do it, make sure you type it in. On line 12, initials are frequently missing. They must be wet ink or we need a new original. On line 13, the wet ink signature of buyer printed name also. If it is a corporation or LLC, business name must be printed. Purchaser must sign and print name and title as such. For example, John Doe, managing member. The purchaser address is required. PO boxes are not allowed, and the phone number is frequently missing. Always make sure you enter the buyer's phone number. And if it is an LLC or your buyer is purchasing under, then we do need a copy of the LLC docs with the contract. The date the contract signed is frequently also missing or in a wrong spot. Certification of broker. Business name and address to match NAID. Correct EIN or SSN needed and must match the NAID. The broker signing must be the broker on the NAID, not the agent. If someone else signs, they must provide a broker authorization letter signed by the broker of record. Other frequent sales contract errors. The PCR is missing or not signed. This is sent out with bid acceptance. You want to make sure that the buyers sign and date the PCR, which is a property condition report. The lead-based paint addendum is often missing. The lead-based paint addendum, the broker sometimes does not initial and sign, or the broker initials on the wrong loan type. The purchaser is not initialing on both spots. The lead-based paint receipt addendum, this form has a lot of corrections. Applicable LBP statement initialed in line 1 and 2. Purchasers need to initial line 3 and 4 as always. It is difficult asking for corrections for this form as agents get it confused with the lead-based paint addendum. Some agents think this is the lead-based paint addendum. The BSP closing agent instructions sometimes is not complete. The agent should also send over the closing agent E&O insurance and state license with this document so that we can quickly get them in our system. If the closing agent has had another deal that is not a transition file with BLB, we would already have their information. It's better to get it up front and not have to worry about it later. Agents do not have to hold up sending us the original contract package waiting on this form. It can be emailed or faxed. We also need to make sure on the HUD electronic filing form, agents needs to understand that this pertains to the purchaser, whether or not the purchaser is an agent, and purchaser needs to initial, not checkmark. EMD checks not made out properly, not certified funds, not given to the listing broker. Purchaser changes closing company, and now they need a new check made out to the new closing company. The checks made out to the closing agent or buyer's name looks like this: First American Title or John Smith. If it is made out to the closing agent company, we will accept. However, it is preferred that it is made out to both with the word or. When we ask for the new original on a sales contract and we tell them all of the corrections, they fix what we asked them to do and then change other parts of the contract that weren't wrong in the first place, and now they are wrong. Please make sure you pay attention to this. Agents should always address email correspondence with the case number and street address when emailing to us. The best way to do this is to put it right in the subject line of your email and also include it in the paragraph of your email. If a fax is sent, please make sure the case number is printed somewhere on each page, and absolutely no whiteout is allowed on the HUD 9548 sales contracts. And where do I deliver or mail my contract, addenda, and copy of EMD if I have the winning bid? Please deliver the original sales contract and addenda to BLB Resources within 2 business days to the address below. And this is where some agents do tend to get confused. Where do I deliver or mail my original EMD if I have the winning bid? Please deliver the original EMD to the listing agent within 2 business days of acceptance. We recommend that a copy of the buyer select addendum be included so that they may verify the EMD is correct. And if you need more assistance, one thing I can say about HUD, HUD Homes, BLB Resources, and us at Cantave Realty Group, we do go the extra mile to help you. So this is for BLB. Their customer service department would be happy to assist if you have questions regarding how to complete your contract package. And their phone number is 248-356-4711. You can also call us here at Cantave Realty Group. We're always willing to help, or the listing office on another HUD home if we're not the listing office. Our direct number here is 781-725-2179. And thank you again.